Welcome to the Moment of Suspension podcast, Bryce. It's an honor to have you here. You are an experienced podcaster. I'm just getting my feet wet in here, and so I'm super stoked to have you. We seem to share a lot of things in common, so excited to have this conversation with you to bring in the contrast of male and female into this series of the Moment of Suspension podcast.
You have like a country vibe to you. Where are you from, and kind of what's your background?
So I'm from Virginia.
Okay.
Virginia Beach, so literally the other coast.
Yeah. Like the San Diego of the East Coast. That's where all my Navy SEALs go.
Legit, yeah. So that's why I feel like I fit in. San Diego's like the second Virginia Beach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A little warmer.
But warmer. Well, yeah. I mean, in the summer there, it gets really humid. So we skip out on the, you shower and then you walk out and then you need a shower again kind of thing on the East Coast. But yeah. Hopefully I don't have a country accent. I've tried to really get rid of that.
It's there a little bit.
It's a little bit. But I mean, that's my life. I hang out with horse people, but West Coast horse people don't really have an accent. So I guess it's there from before, unfortunately.
What are your thoughts on Stagecoach? We just got back.
I've actually never been. Oh. It's so embarrassing to say.
Do you like country music?
Yes, I do like country music, but I also like really ghetto rap music. There's like a ghetto part of me. I went to a really ghetto high school.
Me too.
There's going to be a lot in common.
Yeah, this is dope. This is dope.
So like secretly, yeah, I like really dirty rap music, but then I'll listen to Morgan Wallen, while I'm getting ready.
Last night we let the liquor talk.
Right, exactly.
Yep. So Virginia, and then how'd you find your way out this way?
So it is a long story. My mom's side of the family always was associated with San Diego. A lot of the older generation they either were a couple that have lived here, some would come and vacation here. So there were some older family roots. Most of them have passed away at this point. But so my sister and I had been exposed a little bit when we were younger, had come here, but our life was mostly on the East Coast. My sister was the trailblazer, so once she finished high school, she had started undergrad and then wanted to leave Virginia, so she came here and then ended up meeting her husband and has been here, oh my gosh, probably over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So there was a little bit of family that had been here, and then my sister wanted to come here, and then I followed my sister from the East Coast. Mm-hmm. So we've been here ever since. I first came here for a little bit before I went to chiropractic school, and then I went up to the Bay, was there for 4 years, then went all the way up to Washington for like just a little bit right out of school. My first associateship job was there, and then I landed here in San Diego 2017, and then launched Giddy Up Chiropractic. And have been here ever since. But what about you?
That's so cool. I love the name Giddy Up Chiropractic. That's badass.
Thanks.
That's cool. I started in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And born and raised in LA. Okay. And I just remember my recruiting process within the basketball space was complex. It was confusing. It was like some weeks I was recruited by Power 5 schools, and it felt like the future was the NBA. And then other times the phone stopped ringing and people weren't knocking on the door as much. And so eventually it came down to a handful of schools my senior year, and I just ended up deciding on San Diego State. And so when I came down here...
So basketball brought you here.
Yeah, okay. Basketball brought me here originally. And honestly, I didn't like it. I felt like it was a very transient city that wasn't very loyal to the city, that didn't feel like it had roots. And I was used to loyalty. Like, I was raised on loyalty.
I agree with that. And I still struggle with that a little bit.
Me too.
With San Diego. So, like, I always joke, like, on the East Coast, you, like, go to dinner at your neighbor's house, you find these communities, and it's honestly easier to make friends. Mm-hmm. And then you come here, and I used to think it was like West Coast vibes, but I think you're right. I think it's specific a little bit to San Diego. I say that with love, because there are people from like all over, from different places, and they just kind of get clicked into their friend groups, and it's like, it's harder to, and then as you get older, because school allows you to be, make friends or, whatever it might be. So then, as we get older, you have to try a little harder.
You absolutely do. And I think at that time it was close enough to LA where I could go visit. I wasn't totally ready to cut that cord. And then when my father got sick, I transferred from San Diego State to Cal State Northridge. I finished out my basketball career there and then got an opportunity to go play professionally overseas in Europe. And when I was over there, life slowed down a little bit. Like, I purposely wore this shirt. My dad was a big UCLA fan growing up, and we very much observed John Wooden. And John Wooden had a phrase that lives rent-free in my head forever, which is, be quick but not in a hurry. That's what I felt when I was in Sweden. People slowed down, and there's a traditional coffee break there called fika. And fika is, Dr. Bek, how are you? How's your well-being? Like, how's your sleep? How's your digestion? How's your pursuit of joy and fulfillment? Versus in America, a traditional coffee break is like, hey, let's go get a quick hit of caffeine, then we'll get back into the hustle.
And talk to no one in the coffee shop while you're at it,
Yeah, because we're in a hurry. I'm on a phone call. I've got my earbuds in. I'm not really socializing and being a part of the human experiment. I'm just trying to get a caffeine hit. I was an observer of that. It didn't feel good. The fika felt good, but the observer or the contrast of what I come from didn't feel good, just to create transparency. And so when I came back to America, I lived in LA for a bit. I lived in Chicago for a bit, and I was like, this feels inauthentic to me. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't ready to leave California. I'm spoiled by the weather. I love the sunshine. I'm definitely a sun boy. I'm definitely an ocean and mountain person. Like, nature definitely unlocks reservoirs of whatever biology is in here that wants to connect with that level of humanness. And I just decided I don't want to be in LA forever. And so when somebody knocked on the door and provided a job opportunity in 2014, I just jumped all over that. I also had this itch for competition still coming back from basketball. I was like, I'm not quite ready to give this up.
So rewind though. So were you done with basketball at that point?
I played overseas for a while, and I remember there was a specific experience where...
And what was the goal? Were you trying to stay pro?
The goal going there was to elongate my career. I ended my college career a little bit earlier than I would have liked, but my college career just wasn't it. Like, I just, for whatever reason, couldn't make my skill set match the different systems that I played in, and my joy and my love for the game just started to go away. It became very transactional. And at an early age, I very much observed, like, the pressure that the coaches faced of, like, hey, like, I need the X's and O's. I need to perform. I need measurables so I can keep my job. And I don't know, there's an interesting ideation. That's a phenomenal question, because as a kid, I fell in love with the peace of shooting a basketball and how it felt coming off my fingertips and the sound of the ball.
Yeah.
And the rhythmic movement that felt flowy and childlike and playful.
So that is why I named my podcast Moment of Suspension. So that feeling, and so, like, I feel like for you and I, it both starts with sports. Mine's riding horses. And, I can describe it differently, but it's that, like, light, airy feeling, peaceful. You feel like you're in flow. And it is very childlike. And then as life goes on, a lot of times that can start to go away, and a lot of people will just stay in that place that, so moment of suspension, I love that you touched on that.
That's beautiful.
So for you, it was basketball.
Yeah.
And so that feeling, a lot of us chase in life, but it also can be the flip side too, which I feel like you and I will get more into that conversation of when you also realize that you can't necessarily achieve that anymore because of the pressure and the performance. And so you pivot.
You start to get into a space that doesn't feel natural anymore. It becomes performative. It becomes monetary. It becomes about statistics. One of my favorite quotes in life is there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And for people that follow basketball, Draymond Green is a great example of this, in that he's somebody that played for the Warriors, helped them achieve numerous championships with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, names that people that follow sports know. He wasn't a great scorer, but he was great at setting screens. He was a great locker room guy. He was great at making the intangibles and getting guys the ball in the right spot, but it wasn't really measurable. On paper, it didn't really look great. And I always admired that, in the sense of, like, you're doing the things that don't really give you a pat on the back or the claps.
Yeah.
But without you, like, there's stagnation. Like, you're like the straw of the drink. You've got to stir that thing in order to allow people to be in the right spaces to do the things that allow them to optimize. And so I just became an observer of that within basketball and the human experience. And I think I always thought about, like, how does sports have transferable skills into various chapters? Because a lot of life is seasons.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, to go back to your original question, played overseas for a little while, and I had a game that was, in the words of my father, was unconscious. I was taking stupid shots, and they were going in. I was acting irresponsibly, and the bounce was just going my way.
We love when we're in that season of life, right?
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And I scored 41 points. There's an amazing, like, newspaper clip of, like, Smith something. It's all Swedish. It's like Smith something 41 poing and blah, and I was like, whoa, this is super cool. And, like, it was such a small town. It was Kalmar, Sweden, 5 hours south of Stockholm. And I remember just like, whoa, this is what, like, Kobe feels like every day in LA. And you're like a celebrity. Everybody wants to give you food and a drink. And in my case, it lasts like 3 or 4 days.
Right.
And then the very next game, I was taking the same stupid shots, thinking, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
And then were you making it still?
They weren't going in. And I was turning the ball over, and it wasn't bouncing my way in that very next game. 4 days later, I ended up needing to go to a dinner with the leadership team of the club and, like, apologize. And they were, like, threatening to send me home. And I remember in my mind, like, oh, you don't love me for me. You love me for what I can do. And that created the
statistics, the performance.
Yeah, it created a tough story in my head.
And as a man, too, like that, I mean, I feel like you guys you're kind of wired to be that way. And then those environments fuel that. But then also, when it doesn't go your way, like, what is your identity at that point, right?
And so I think it put me in it created a story in my head based on proof of concept that I still think knocks on my door on occasion. It's very difficult when you're trying to do the next right thing and it's not optimizing the way we would like. And so I ended up finishing up that season, and I had a moment where I made my peace with the sport. I had a game that wasn't the 41-point game. It wasn't the 19-point game on terrible field goal percentage right after with a ton of turnovers. It was just like a game. I had 20-something points, but I felt like, you know what? I checked the box in this sport. I made my peace with the sport. I don't need to be the guy that goes to LA Fitness and plays adult league basketball for the next 40 fucking years.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm in my peace. I'm ready to move on. What are the transferable skills as to how I can take that perceived identity and the intangibles and pay it forward into something else? And so it was very explorative, but it was also really confusing. I came back so lost.
I feel like that story of basketball with you fits into the series in my podcast after Origin of Suspension, which we kind of both talked about that feeling. Moment of suspension, a lot of people can describe in different seasons of life. It feels good. But then Performance Overdrive is the first part of the series, which I feel like you're speaking to with basketball. And it's like a way of being. It works until it doesn't work. You're being driven by numbers and performance, and then when it doesn't work, then you have to reevaluate, like, well, who who am I and how do I want to move forward? And so then moving into what I call, and people call it different things, it's called the gap. And so at that point, you know, you kind of feel like you're mid-air, like the in-between place of basketball was my identity probably at that point for you, and then I'm not going to do that anymore, so now what? And it's a really uncomfortable place, and you can move through those phases super fast, but you also, like for me, I was in a period of a gap of probably for 5 years. So talk about when you came back here to the United States, and then what was that like for you? Did you feel like, yeah, you had to kind of rewrite who Bryce was?
Yeah, it's a great question. Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't possess the patience that I have now. And I filled gaps pretty quickly. Okay. I went from one relationship to the next relationship. I went from basketball straight into CrossFit. I was like, oh, I have this itch for competition. I'm going to find this next thing. And
which is almost like bouncing back into performance overdrive. Yep. So because the gap requires stillness, being uncomfortable to be able to kind of upgrade that identity to something else.
So beautifully said. That's very astute of you to note. At that time, I just didn't possess the maturity to work in. I only knew how to work out. And I hate saying that about myself because it's not something I'm very proud of, but it is something that I knew. And so I was like, okay, maybe I didn't lean into basketball as much towards the end of my career. I leaned into the weight room a little bit. Maybe there's a way to like combine the two and figure out this next thing. And so I found myself in CrossFit and just submerged myself. And the thing that grabbed me really outside of performative culture was what I missed most, which was locker room culture. I missed community. And so when I could go to the same CrossFit gym every day at the end of my work shift, I could see the same people. We could have honest conversation. We could pursue peak expression together and do hard things. I made a bunch of friends. We formed a tribe. We had group texts, and I was like, oh, this is very familiar. Mm-hmm. Why shift?
Just why we love sports, right?
Well, yeah, like let's just keep going. And it also was like the perfect storm because I was finishing my degree in exercise science. Then I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go to physical therapy school. My brother was a doctor. My ego wanted like the doctor name in front of my name. And so I just fully invested in physical therapy school, and I was working as a student assistant strength and conditioning coach at Cal State Northridge at the time. And I just remember through the process of physical therapy school, I was also working as a physical therapy aide. I worked at a place that was adaptive therapeutic exercise, and then I also worked as a CrossFit coach a couple times a week. So I was just like trying to test the waters. And I remember sitting there with ultrasound on somebody's shoulder. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to get this shoulder optimally functional. We're going to get full flexion and extension so you can live the life you want. This is an older patient. I was like, yeah, we're going to be able to get a can out of the top of the cabinet. And we're going to be able to get things out of the fridge. You're going to be able to reach, whenever you want a flight and put your things in your overhead bin. She was like, I don't care about any of that. I just am here because I want to reap benefits from car accidents. I had like 4 or 5 people like that in a row. And I was like, holy moly.
I can relate to that from chiropractic. And what's actually really funny, keep that thought, is I was going to go to physical therapy school. And I remember sitting there, and I was an intern or something, and I was like, this is like watching paint dry.
Yeah. That's how it felt. And
no offense to my physical therapist out there.
Not at all. Because it's like any field, right? Like there's great lawyers, there's bad lawyers. There's great doctors, bad doctors. Great coaches, bad coaches. Great podcasters, bad podcasters. I'm one of the bad ones, by the way. But what's interesting to me is that I realized in that moment that I was chasing a title. I was chasing a title to get love and validation from the world, to have that DR period in front of my name, thinking it was going to unlock a reservoir of potential.
Which is not a good enough reason to do it, right?
And it didn't light my heart on fire. And so I decided to just drop it. I had 9 units left. And I said, F it.
I love that.
So just pivoted, was like, you know what? I'm not going to play into the narrative of societal norms of how you decide to give me respect based on credentialism. I'm actually just going to pursue this over here. and I'm going to make a change, and I want my credentialism to be my name, my energy, the love that you feel in the container that I'm able to create. It's probably going to be a lot harder, but I know what I'm signing up for, but it feels more in alignment with who I am as a human. So that's when I just went all in on strength and conditioning and that type of stuff. Dabbled a little bit with firefighting. I thought that was maybe something I wanted to pursue, but the whole time I would like work as a wildland firefighter for a couple of years. I just couldn't stop thinking about like, that person doesn't move that good. I don't love their posture. I want to like fix this. I want to do that. And then I also just continually went back to this word that I love, which is playtime. And that's how I've always viewed training. Hey, do you want to come play? I text my clients that all the time.
Yeah.
And it's just how I view it. It's like, we hinge, we push, we pull, we carry, we do monostructural things, and we squat sometimes. But in my brain, I'm like, no, this is an adult playground. Let's get an escape from the desk or the cubicle. Let's go play. And then you can go back into life, and hopefully this adds some value into everything else that you do.
Wow. That's a lot. I feel like we went through performance overdrive, the gap, and a bit of the surrender, which is like...
Oh, I have so much more to say on the gap, but okay. I'll press pause.
No, you don't need to press pause. We have a lot in common. We have the same cameraman, but we both have lost parents. And I want to speak to that a little bit because I know that's probably a driver, I would assume, behind some of who you are. And I lost my dad in high school, and so we have that in common. We both love sports. Both have done sports at a high level. You higher level than me. Both front background health and fitness. My degree, I was exercise science, and then I became kinesiology with a sports management business minor kind of thing.
Smart.
And then we were both pursuing being a doctor, which you could have. You just like chose to surrender at that point. You're like, this is not for me. So respect that. I was going to be a neurosurgeon. So when my dad passed away, he passed away from a stroke and didn't make it out of surgery. So that was like kind of where I was like, I think I want to be a doctor. And then, fast forward, we don't need to talk about my journey in chiropractic today, but ended up landing in chiropractic. So I want to get like a little deeper with you on how you're wired, because I think those conversations they're just not talked about enough with high performing men and some of the things you've gone through. We talked about basketball. We've talked about you launching your podcast, which I want to touch on again, which seems like it was inspired through fitness, right? A
little bit in the beginning,
business.
But honestly, the podcast came around mostly because of my dad.
Okay.
So I'm excited to chat about that.
So
with
I must have like
your intuition, that volume is spot on.
That was the Holy Spirit right there, right? Mm-hmm. So and then this other thing I think we have in common is our faith in God. So which is very important. This is not a religious podcast, but it's threaded throughout my life, and I feel like as you go through the levels in life and seasons, we all start to kind of recognize something at some point that you've got to give credit to or talk to, or right, to get through things. So let's talk about your dad.
Yeah. So he was very pivotal in my life. I think it's very cool that you notice those things, right? Like the first phase of anything, if you're going to be a thought leader, a podcaster, a doctor, a contributor, a service provider in the world, notice. Have that intake form with lenses to be able to, three of my favorite words within the human experience are seek to understand. That's going to give us a lot of answers over our ego. It's like, I know, I learned that in school. It's like, sure, they can combine. They can come together to then connect with people or someone on a deeper level. And so I think your willingness to really listen to the conversations that you're having as far as the commonalities between us based on our amazing strategist and team member Ernest is very cool, right? Like not everybody does that. They're just so infiltrated on like, what can I get and how is this going to grow my seed into this plant in the world? And I think when you really love, that's the way you think. And I think you start to really love when parents are taken away or when something you really care about is taken away. And I'm sorry for your loss. You said you lost your father in high school.
I did.
Very young, before you really knew what grieving was.
Totally, yeah. And there's like a whole spiral with that, like being a woman. My parents had already been divorced.
Mm-hmm.
I had like a decent childhood. So it was a little, they shouldn't have gotten divorced, you know, it's kind of, but then that's another conversation for another day, because money is really, I would say, one of the roots of why they ended up parting ways, because my dad was kind of going through a life crisis with his career, and my mom was having to carry the family. So my version of like performing and being like, well, I can't trust a man then because he can't provide for me. And so that was confirmed once they split. And then it was like, you know, you start just kind of checking the boxes like, oh, this is how life works. Like, oh, and then now he died. So that's confirming I definitely can't like depend on a man, you know, like, and so it was not just like the loss of him, but it also just kind of was beginning to hardwire who I was as a young woman and to how I was going to live life, you know. So, and then, you know, fast forward, and then it becomes also confirming, because you're like, well, if I work hard and I'm good at sports and I do good in school, like I get further in life, you know, and it just becomes this, like, as you know, like this rat wheel. And then you're like, and now I'm chasing success, and now I don't even know what, and then you wake up and you're like, but what is success? Like, what am I chasing? Like, what train am I on? And so, but I would say my dad was a big trigger of that, like little Bek, you know, that I've had to come to terms with. And really this podcast was also, it was the inspiration behind riding horses, which has been my way of like you were saying earlier, nature, you know, like horses are one of the most pure representations of God to me.
Oh yeah.
And so that's why I always go back to them with that. So horses, you know, are an inspiration behind the podcast, but really my struggles as a successful woman too, but also figuring out things that become destructive at some point. So that was
relationship of your father, and I think like his integration into your life, and then the recognition of money and how it can be great to pursue, a great carrot to have incentive to do something amazing. But it can also be weaponized. And that just shows this beautiful and tumultuous duality within life.
Yeah.
And I think you described it really well. And I would also say there's this moment prior to losing your parents that you're not aware of until after they leave. And for me, and I don't want to speak for you, but I want to echo what you kind of just described and maybe mirror and describe it in what I heard.
From a male's perspective, it's exactly what I love, yeah.
As a kid, self-reliance was everything. If I just put in more reps, the 10,000-hour rule, I'm going to make more shots, I'm going to score more points, I'm going to get more attention, I'm going to get more love, I'm going to get more validation, I'm going to keep getting good grades, I'm going to keep showing up, I'm going to keep doing the next right thing. And as a byproduct, life's supposed to reward me, right? I'm supposed to make more money. I'm supposed to get into the school. I'm supposed to then have the family and the white picket fence, and all these things are supposed to happen.
Totally.
That kind of was the narrative right around like the Industrial Revolution, right? Like just get good grades, go to college. Maybe you play a sport and you have some extracurriculars that makes you like pseudo uncommon amongst the uncommon. And then it unlocks this life that you desire. Doesn't really work that way anymore.
Right.
Right? Like that was like a version of the American dream. So you're painted this narrative, you follow the path, and then it doesn't work out.
Yeah, right. Or it's supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and now it doesn't. Now I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, so it creates cognitive confusion. And then you're like, okay, that's okay. I have the ability to be adaptable and pivot and figure out the next move. But these two people, mom and dad, that you think are, you know, going to be together forever and, you know, have this strong foundation that you can rely on when life gets hard, you realize they're humans too. They were a version of a superhero for you as a kid. And then as you got older, they became more humanized. And then eventually they're gone. And oftentimes, at least in mine and your case, they're gone too soon. So it's brutal in the sense of like you're trying to build this thing. You're trying to listen to that little intuitive little Bek, as you described, little Bryce over here. And you have this version of risk tolerance, which is, hey, I'm going to go do the thing. And if it doesn't work out, I've got these people over here that love me unconditionally. But what happens when you're trying to do the thing?
And they're not there.
And then you look backwards and it's empty.
Right.
It forces you as a human to upgrade your operating system to a level of, I don't have words.
It's like not relying on yourself anymore too. That's where God came into the picture for me, where, you know, if there's certain human beings that I can't rely on, and now it's, so at first you start to rely on yourself, right? But that will only get you so far at some point too, is self-reliance. So for me, then it became relying on God at that point.
I wish I would have found him sooner. At that time, it was, like I alluded to previously, self-reliance is everything. I'll just outwork the competition. I have it tattooed on my leg. I used to run the Santa Monica stairs just to okay, if I'm not scoring the ball, at least my conditioning will be better than everybody else. And then it was like, I developed plantar fasciitis by doing it too much. Okay, I'm just going to go into the gym and get more shots up than everybody else. And then it's like, okay, broke my hand. Can't really do that anymore. Let me get into the gym and make my legs so strong. And then it was like, okay, I got knee tendonitis. And then I get to San Diego State and end up breaking my nose my freshman year. That's why it's super crooked.
I didn't even notice.
And it's just so many different forms of adversity took place. And I think as a younger human, it was like, man, life is happening to me. You develop this victim mentality. You don't really have the tools to navigate it. And I mean, that hit me a little later in life through CrossFit.
Same. I feel like it hit me later too.
Yeah. And, when I was younger, I was like, I'm still young. I'll get to the other side. We'll figure this out.
You were probably still getting results too, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
I would say I was still getting results into my 30s, 36. I think we're
close. Yeah.
We're close, yeah.
When's your birthday?
November.
Okay. I'm a March baby.
Okay.
We're close. I'm 36 as well. And, it's the thing that, it's tough to deconstruct because it worked.
Exactly. It worked. And that's what you're like, well, that, performance overdrive has evidence. Now I'm in the gap and there's no evidence to what's on the other side.
Mm-hmm. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. My stubborn ass definitely won't change if it's working consistently. And I mean, I think that relates to a lot of people, that pain seems to be on the unfortunate course of action that gets people to change. What did I see yesterday?
And there'll be that tipping point for you. The loss of your dad was probably one of those things. Basketball, coming to the realization.
Those were two places that created a gap for sure.
Two big triggers of what I call moment of suspension. Because moment of suspension can be, that amazing feeling you love about basketball, but it also is a moment of suspension. There are those seasons or things in life that kind of punch you in the face that make you have to get real with yourself.
Yeah, I think you described that perfectly. There's I think people go through a few of those. And then I started to observe the world through transitions. And I'll paint that picture for you. So in CrossFit, I'm 6'4", 225 pounds. I'm very long and I'm very heavy in comparison to the ideal CrossFit build, which is probably 5'9", maybe somewhere between 185 and 205. When you think about work capacity, it's force times distance over time equals your work. If the distance is always longer and you have a time component, a longer lever is going to require more time to move that distance and then perform the work. So a smaller athlete just has a higher ceiling in regards to the sport of fitness. Well, my stubborn ass was like, well, I'm going to defy that. I'm going to figure this out. And I was on that quest for about 12 years. And then the body didn't really want to respond to the mind anymore. I didn't really want to fit a square peg in a round hole anymore. And when my father got diagnosed, I was still playing that game. It was 2018. I received a phone call from my sister that my dad was diagnosed with terminal glioblastoma, stage 4 cancer. And I didn't have the tools to navigate it. I just walked outside, sat on the curb, and just bawled my eyes out. And I still had that fighter's athlete mentality of, we're going to make it through this. I'm going to coach and train. I'm just going to smash caffeine. I'm going to turn myself into a robot. I'm going to head up to LA. Yeah. I'm going to spend quality time with my dad. When he's asleep, I'm going to train the hospital parking lot. When he's awake, I'm going to interview him. And we're going to have deep conversation. It's going to be so cool. We're going to figure it out, and this is going to be something I remember forever. Well, the only thing that was right is that it was something I'm going to remember forever. Everything else was just like, hey, dude, you actually have to sleep. You can't just train yourself into the ground.
Right.
You can't just jump into another relationship and trauma bond. That didn't work.
It's not sustainable.
None of these things that I chose to do were sustainable, but I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. And so rather than sitting in the gap and being a human being, I chose to be a human doing.
Yep.
And I learned the lessons the hard way.
Instead of being, which is like a work in progress for all of us, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm thankful for that time. It taught me a lot. Being able to support my mom in that process was a lot. There's a lot of intricacies and behind the curtain things that took place that are not forward facing, that were big, hairy, audacious financial bits, things with our house, things emotionally, things with relationships, things that got very, very difficult at that time. And like I said, at that time, I chose the story of this as happening to me and not for me. I hadn't found my relationship with God yet. I was still, I'm spiritual. My parents raised us pseudo-Christian, but we never really went to church. And my father was the son of a priest. Wow. And I don't think he admired my grandfather's choices and habits. And so he basically said, hey.
Kind of put a sour taste in his mouth.
Yeah. But he didn't want to project that onto us.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool. And so he basically was like, hey, I'm not going to mandate that our family goes to church, but gave each of us a Bible. I was like, hey, if you have any questions, I'll answer them for you. If you want to go with your friends or if you want to go with, different people, you're welcome to. If you have any questions, I'll be here to help answer them. We can have those discussions. Just not something I'm going to really impose into our family. And I think when you look at human behavior, if you have incentive, you can backtrack and look at how people are going to behave. Well, if there's no incentive to be like, hey, we need to go to church on Sunday, I wasn't actively forming a relationship with God. I was practicing the pseudo quotes that my mom and dad would whisper in our ear. My mom would always say hey, do the next right thing, treat people appropriately, don't do anything you have to look over your shoulder about. So it's it had religious ideation.
Yeah.
But it wasn't formal to scripture.
Right.
And I didn't know this at the time, but as I got older and started to go through real loss, the loneliness that I felt was unimaginable. And so you describe it as the gap. I echo Chris Williamson from Modern Wisdom, and I call it the lonely chapter.
And all of those are accurate, right? Because the gap can be one of the most loneliest places and darkest places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt very misunderstood. And I've said it before, but the transition from basketball to CrossFit wasn't that bad. I figured it out pretty quick. The transition from athlete to entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's a much bigger gap.
I still am figuring it out.
So I want to go back to the God thing, though, because this is an important thing, and I appreciate your transparency because I think it needs to be, if that's someone's belief, I appreciate having this conversation with you because I think there comes a point, especially when you're in those bigger transitions, that's where you start to seek that, where you're like, I just can't do this on my own anymore. Right? I can't go lift heavier, right? It just gets to that point, and then you layer all the trauma on top of that in life. And I don't think it's talked enough about with entrepreneurs and business and the part of self-development and things I love. But the layer for me that's become the realest too is the word of God and scripture. It's that deeper layer, where we can generically talk about God, or we can go right into, so we don't need to go there today, but I just want to close that loop with you on if that was part of your transition from athlete to entrepreneur.
Originally, no. Originally, like I alluded to, I was very stubborn. I was just continuing to push. I didn't care about the pain. Didn't care about more sleep. Didn't care about managing my emotions. I hadn't even gone to therapy at that point. I tried to use stubbornness and toxic masculinity to just push through and outwardly put on a facade that everything was great. And then behind the scenes was navigating extreme pain, like severe low back and joint pain in my left elbow. Like I got to the point where I tore my UCL, my brachioradialis, and my dog would pull to chase a bunny. And I'd like pull in like, I could barely drink a cup of coffee.
My goodness.
And I just realized at some point, like, okay, my way's not working, but like I wasn't willing to ask for help.
Right.
I felt like sharing that level of weakness was going to be weaponized against me. And so, and I didn't want to show that weakness to the place that I was employed, because then I was like, well, then I'm going to have to take time off. Then I won't be able to provide for my lifestyle, my family, and the pursuit of long-term goals.
Which I feel like a lot of men can relate to this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so finally I was like, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. So my first pursuit was going to a naturopath friend of mine. I was like, I need to peek under the hood. So we did a blood panel.
Yeah.
We saw a ton of my deficiencies and we started to go through a protocol, and I wasn't willing to take anything at that point. So I was like, what lifestyle things can I implement? At that time, my father had just passed, and I felt the need to go on what I described as a listening tour. So I started the podcast.
Okay.
Had no idea what I was doing. Bought every wrong mic that's inexpensive on Amazon. Did all of the lighting issues wrong. Had numerous times where the internet went out. Had the most horrible backdrops that I didn't iron like I should, that were like wrinkled. That
We've upgraded today. We're in the speakeasy, I think.
Yeah, like this is so good compared to what I was doing before. And you know, in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be the try-hard guy. I'm going to do the freaking thing, and I'm going to show up to people's houses. And ironically, one of my first podcasts, I ended up at Laird Hamilton's house, one of the biggest big wave surfers on the planet. And we were working out in his pool, and all of a sudden he's like, hey, you want to do some stuff in the sauna and the ice? I didn't really have experience with it yet. And I was like, sure. And so we get into the sauna, and it's so freaking hot. But in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to show him that. Like, I got this. And then he throws me into the cold tub, and I had my, and he's like, just hang out 3 minutes. And like, I wasn't going to get out. So I was just like, I'm just going to stay here. The euphoria that I felt on the other side, I was like, wow, like I sat in the sauna and then I sat in the cold. I really didn't do anything. That was the first time I was a human being that I felt so connected to some sort of higher power that wasn't me.
Wow.
That unlocked a curiosity in me.
Okay.
That I was like, okay, something about this contrast. I'm having sensations that are outside of, I'm just going to go do strict pull-ups, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to do burpees until my head falls off. I couldn't do in those two arenas. And so it put me down a path of like, whoa, I think I'm great at working out, but I actually don't know how to work in. And that's when I started to ask more questions amongst people that I felt like knew how to work in.
Which I feel like that sensation that you were talking about, I would call the surrender. I feel like you've moved through a lot of these phases. And we do.
The surrender is the perfect phrasing for that.
Yeah, and which is seems very counterintuitive for a type A man, right? That actually could be what could get me to the next level.
Yeah, it was interesting too because before my father was diagnosed with cancer, he was navigating, like, he had torn some stuff in his elbow, so he was on like oxycodone for that. And then he, a few years earlier, had torn his Achilles, so he's on pain medication for that. And then after he decided to retire, like, he was having a hard time sleeping. We actually just released a podcast on ALLSMITH today around how Navy people have a hard time sleeping because they're constantly in this fight or flight response.
Yeah.
So then what do? They take Xanax and Ambien to manage anxiety, get rid of ruminating thoughts. At that time, they weren't talking about breath work, sauna, ice, down regulating, using meditation, the Calm app. They're just medicating, and it's covered by the VA, so it's like, screw it, I'll just take this stuff. Well, anyway, that led down a tough rabbit hole for my dad. So my dad was going to AA for a while prior to his cancer diagnosis, and I was like holding his hand through that and trying to like be the glue between the marriage between my mom and my dad. When my mom is just like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Yeah. My brother was in medical school at the time. My sister was working an awesome job, but she was traveling all the time. So I felt this inner responsibility to be the glue. And I think that, then led to like this savior complex, like, oh, I can save everybody. Like, I'll put me in the back burner. I'll just do it on nights and weekends, and then I'll put everybody else at the forefront. But anyway, what that helped me understand is nothing worked for my dad. He was so smart and stubborn that like the word God irritated him until a fellow AA member that became a close friend of his, after he had done Tai Chi for a year, surrendered to a space of like movement and connection with self that wasn't, how many pull-ups can I do? What's my bench press? How much can I squat? What do I look like in the mirror? Rah! He connected with himself, and somebody had said the word creator to him. And he was like, whoa. And then somebody challenged him and said, okay, maybe you don't believe in this higher power thing anymore. You're frustrated based on your inner child, which we should also explore at some point, which then taught me, oh, there's this inner child that lives in us subconsciously. So I got curious about that.
Yeah.
And this was just observing his journey. Then it became, how do you explain how you met your wife? How do you explain why she stuck around with you through all these challenges? How do you explain these 3 beautiful children that you brought into the world? Yes, you've gone through some hard things, but you're choosing to look at this when you can choose to look at the gratitude too and notice that they both exist.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that unlocked something in him where he was like, whoa, I surrender. And I remember him saying those words, and my dad never had tattoos in his life. And I explained to him the contrast between the good wolf and the bad wolf, that famous Cherokee story. And that's tattooed on the back of my leg. And I remember sharing that story with him before he passed. With his skin and frail skin, he tattooed "Feed the Right Wolf" on his arm.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And so that to me is just like, do the right thing when nobody's watching. Mm-hmm. And so when you get to that level of surrender, you're not perfect. But you have to pause and be a little bit curious and be like, okay, there's some things where the ball did bounce my way.
Right.
How can I understand why?
Because it wasn't self-doing.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
100%. So like, I don't claim to be an expert, but at that time I was curious about religious ideation. I started to explore a little more, started to look up certain things. Maybe I went to church with some people, started to flip through the Bible a little bit, but I still wasn't there. Mm-hmm. I was still pessimistic, pushing back like, oh, there's no way this took place or that took place. Those are just metaphors. Like, I was very pessimistic. And then ironically, I was coaching in the gym one day, and I noticed this gentleman for like a couple weeks. He's like doing the same workout all the time. And I'm like, this is odd. And so I just got curious. I was like, hey, man, what's up? Like, I'm seeing this. I'm noticing this. What's going on? And he had a severe back injury. And at that time, he didn't tell me he was a pastor.
Oh, my goodness.
He didn't tell me what was going on.
This is getting good.
Yeah. And so anyway, like, he and I just start chatting it up. And he enrolls in coaching with me. At first, I'm like, I'm not really trying to sell you. I just noticed that, like, you're doing something and I think I can help. He signs up for coaching. And then he comes in the gym one day and he's like so embarrassed. He's like, Bryce, I forgot my shoes. And I was like, what size shoe are you? He was like 12 and a half. I flipped off my shoes. I was like, here you go. Where are these? And I think he was like jaw dropped that, like, to me, that was just like, there's a problem. Let me fix it. I didn't know it at the time, but like months later, he was like, you literally gave me the shoes off of your feet. Like, that was living radically like Jesus. It felt to me like you were washing my feet. And I didn't think of it that way at the time.
And did you know he was a pastor?
I didn't know he was a pastor yet. So I coached him for a while. And then all of a sudden, my mom got diagnosed. I went through a pretty horrific breakup. And I started going through extreme, like, job stress. And as he and I got closer, he would share with me and then I would share with him. And we started to play this masculine vulnerability ping pong.
And he was not vocal about...
He was not vocal about it. He didn't shove anything down my throat.
Love that.
And that's what created the buy-in for me. He wasn't selling me.
Wow.
And then over the course of time, he kind of slow dripped this story about Job and how he, you know, had all this success, and then the devil and God are having this conversation, and God's like, "Oh, you think you have power? Let me show you my best angel. Like, you're not going to be able to tempt him." And the devil goes, "Oh, watch me. I'm going to take away all his loved ones, all his riches, all the things that are giving him this positive reinforcement of optimism to keep doing the next right thing, and we're going to lure him to become one of us." A version of that. I'm bastardizing it, of course.
No, you're doing great.
And I was like, yeah, that's what this feels like. To have both parents taken away, the identity that I knew as an athlete, this relationship that I thought was a thing, this tribe that I thought had my back. I cried myself to sleep every single night. I navigated tremendous anxiety trying to coach people and just be that energy for people. And then they would leave, and it was just like I had to fight it. And I couldn't call mom. I couldn't call dad. I didn't want to dump on my brother and sister. I hadn't enrolled in therapy yet. And then I heard this line, writing fills the gaps within our thinking. I just started putting pen to paper. And sometimes I was so embarrassed, I'll just like fold it up and throw it away after I'd write it. But I just started getting it out of my head and out of my body and onto this thing. And that's where I started to take action. And I started listening a little bit to Jordan Peterson. He's like, "Hey, you want to change your life? Clean your room." So every day I was like meticulous at cleaning. And then like I was like, okay, I had an experience with this sauna cold plunge thing. I don't really feel safe in the world, but I feel safe at home. What if I can just like figure out how to get that at home? So I figured out how to put that in the home. And then all of a sudden, like my energy started to change. And some of my close friends now, at the time, they were strangers. We started to attract them over, and I would just like spend time with them in the sauna. We'd have hard conversations. They'd invite me to different things. I'm like, "Oh no, sorry, I don't feel comfortable." I want to say for like 18 months, I like went to work and I went home. Like,
wow.
It was an experience. And so anyway, like what did that do? It forced me to like my own company.
And tapping into like spending time with God too.
100%.
And you like had created this container, it sounds like, with your sauna where you're like, I know here I can tap into that.
Yes.
Right.
And also realizing that like.
And others were feeling that too, whether they could articulate what it was, because they kept coming back too, right? Same thing with the guy at the gym who was the pastor and you didn't know it. Yep. He was dripping on you. He was literally showing you like authentically who Jesus was without cramming it down your throat, right?
100%. And he then let me know. He invited me to church a little bit and I was repulsed. I hated it the first time. I felt like the spotlight effect. And it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just like he was trying to create love in a way that I wasn't ready to receive it.
It's so common though. Like, me and my sister grew up going to church, and we, even into our 20s, would skip worship because we were so uncomfortable. We would come late.
Yeah. Like, how do you sing? What do you do with your hands?
Yeah.
I don't know. And like, then you start to just be with it. You find a frequency. And that's another thing I started thinking about is just, we believe in Wi-Fi, but then there's like an energy between people. Like you and I have never met before today officially.
Literally.
But it feels like we've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
And like, you know, huge credit to Ernest for that in our tribe, and obviously social media to like learn from each other. But there is something to the human experience that's around energy. Exactly. And yeah, like the way he introduced God into my life, I'm forever thankful. Huge shout out to Mike Yeager. He's somebody that's a very special person in my life. He helped create the growth and development of ALLSMITH later. Okay. That's part of the story as well. And wow. Yeah, now I'm consistently going to church. Somehow God blessed me with my wife, and she ended up in that journey along the way, which is so special.
I love that you're here today too. Like that, I just like love that so much because that that's very authentic to me. I was wondering that. I was like, I wonder if he'll bring her, because just like her presence too is like very important in this dynamic, and like
it's super cool.
Yeah,
and also like she gets to hear some of the stories behind the curtain.
Yeah,
but to hear the intricacies and the details, and also to have our dogs here to observe, to like, where does daddy go all day? This is what he does.
Yeah. I want to touch on, like, who were you when you met your wife? Were you in performance overdrive? Were you in the gap? Like, I want to speak to that a little bit because I think this is important for men to hear as well.
Yeah.
Did you have it all together?
No.
Probably not.
I still don't. But I was much further along, I would say. At that point,
you were going to church.
I was going to church consistently at that point, but even before church, I realized my way wasn't working. And this is another beautiful story. Huge credit to my sister Kelly. I was lost. I was leaving a job that I was at for over a decade. A tribe of people that I thought had my back that kind of abandoned in the midst of a huge breakup, and kind of this contrast of like, I wasn't really wanting to do the CrossFit thing anymore. I was loving exercise, but I wanted to use it for life development and adventure, and I wanted to have fitness. I didn't want fitness to have me. And I wanted it to kind of be an hour of my day, not 3.5 hours of my day. I wanted to come home and leave the gym feeling good, not leave the gym like, oh my gosh, I crushed that workout, but my back is killing me. And then, tossing and turning all night where you're just like, okay, I just got to figure out how to do this next workout tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a big transition there, and I think that then unlocked this feeling of abandonment that I didn't even know existed, that I think, sort of appeared, not purposefully, but when my parents passed, I felt abandoned. I was like, my brother and sister got this many years with them. Why did I only get this many years? Most people are with their parents until they're in their 50s, and they can have kids and share this life. It's like, eventually I'm going to get married and I'm going to do certain things, and I want to share that with my family, and they're just not here anymore. And so it was tough. And ironically, my sister, who's significantly older than me, was going through therapy, and she was really putting in the work to heal. And I admired that. She and I were like really starting to get close and have deep, meaningful conversations. I was craving that feminine energy. I wasn't really dating. My mom was gone. I didn't really know where to find that.
Yeah.
So she and I got really close. And
so your sister was who started to kind of unlock that with you, having a conversation with a woman about like our deepest, darkest. I need to heal from this.
And also, we were at a level where she could talk to me like of her previous dating experiences, and I could talk to her about that and like what those traumas were and who I'd become based on some of the challenges. And then also she had worked various jobs, and so like she shared with me like, hey, here were my experiences and transitions from jobs and finances and this and that. And so I loved that she was able to create that safe space with me. And basically she called me one day, Dr. Bek, and she goes, I had this conversation with my therapist. You came up a lot in that conversation just based on what's going on and how you and I have really shared recently. She made a recommendation that I think there's somebody you need to talk to. And she sent me the number, and I was like, okay, I'll call you back. I literally called him that second.
Because you were so ready.
I was just like, what I'm doing isn't working. Like, I don't know what else to do. And I'm not proud of my habits, my behavior. I was at the time like in the midst of disability. So I was in between jobs. I didn't really know how to be an entrepreneur yet. I was used to working for this company, and I was just like, Mom and Dad are gone. This just happened. This is my version of rock bottom. I literally called him on the spot, and he answered. And I literally asked the question, hey, like, there's a lot here. Do you have the space where I could kind of give you a peek behind the curtain? He was like, yeah, give it to me. And I was like, whoa, okay. And it was the first time that, like, I actually felt guilty because I felt like I just word vomited and dumped on somebody. And he was like, Bryce, that's a lot. And I was like, I know, I'm so sorry. I've never done that before, but, like, I trusted my sister, and I felt so guilty. And then he was like, can we just do a session right now? And I was like, yeah. And so I like got into my posture. We did this like breath work and this grounding. And he was talking to me about like Mother Gaia and connecting to the earth and really rooting myself and posturing myself and working through my breath. And like all these areas that felt like trapped anxiety started to like get out. And I made the full commitment. I said, hey, I don't have any money, but I'm going to figure it out. And I think this is worth it right now. Like I need help. And that was my version of full surrender, was with my coach and my healer. I still work with him to this day. His name's Justin.
Okay.
And I get teary-eyed. I'm forever grateful to work with him, because if it weren't for him, I don't meet my wife. I don't become the man that I am now without working on me.
Yeah.
And Justin is, man, there were some hard conversations. And he took stories that I'd created and helped me understand that the thing limiting most of us is the story we tell ourselves. So to be able to take those inner child stories that are complex and messy, and it's like looking at fog and mirrors, there's not a ton of clarity. He helped me just narrow the focus, helped gain understanding. Oh, this is why you think that way. That's actually not true. Here's why you think that way. Here's the way. Here's perspective. He never said you need to think this way. He would play with my perspective and be like, which option do you think is appropriate that's going to unlock this beautiful life? And man, there was times I'd end phone calls with him and experience. I'm like, I'm mad at him. Like, you're so mean. But I'm like, wow, this is really what I need. And I never quit on him, and he never quit on me. And that then now this season of life is like creating a definition of what is commitment. Doing what you said you're going to do long after the feeling goes away when you said you were going to do it. And that's something that I think I'm able to now pay forward, because words and actions are very important to me. And when we're able to execute on that consistently, you're like, holy moly, I was the reason why I couldn't get to that spot over there, because my words and actions weren't in alignment. And as we've heard cliche-wise on numerous podcasts, the desire, the goal you want is hidden in the work that you're avoiding. Well, I was avoiding that deep work, and I didn't even know it until my sister hand-delivered Justin into my life. And then I was able to enroll, but it required a yes. And it wasn't just a yes on, I'm going to do this. It was a time commitment. It was a financial commitment. It was a painful commitment. But we're still on that journey today.
I love that. Thank you for being vulnerable and transparent, because this is definitely a conversation I've been wanting to have. I've had it with females, but I don't think a lot of men are always either wanting to open up about it or able to articulate it. So I hope that a lot of men will listen to this and relate to it, because it's coming from a guy like, did pro sports, super fit, was successful in a certain career and then pivoted and then became an entrepreneur and now has a podcast. And so I think you check a lot of boxes that I hope will help unlock other people. Same for women too. Like, I think it's important to hear men's perspective on this. I've had like the female perspective and talk with some high driving capacity women, because we have our own struggles, but there's a lot of parallels here. It's not just like, man, I think that's what I'm trying to get at too with the audience, is it's not just like male and female separate. Like there's, kind of this like symbiosis too. And also why like your partner is so important in that journey, and then linking that in, like you probably wouldn't have found her or attracted her if you hadn't have started to do some of that internal work. So
my mom said something to me before she passed, and I had sort of created ALLSMITH at that time. Like I was still working my other job, but I was like kind of building ALLSMITH a little bit on the side. Not really sure where it was going to go. We were just doing the podcast and sort of launched apparel. And I remember she was in the ICU, and I put this sweater over her. There's a picture that we have. It says "Forged, Not Found," which is kind of our tagline in the sense of like, we're either in adversity, just left it, or we're approaching it. We were just having this conversation, and I was telling her like all the things. I was like, yeah, I'm pursuing clients here. I'm trying to do prospecting over here. I'm trying to go to these events. I'm I was doing. And she was like, Bryce, like, you're kind of chasing. And she and I used to sit in the backyard and watch all these hummingbirds come through. And, like, she would make this, like, incredible concoction of, like, red sugar water. And I'd be like, Mom, you're giving the birds diabetes. Like, you need to stop. Like, this is not good for nature. And then we, like, ChatGPT'd it, and it's like, you can't really give hummingbirds diabetes because they flap so fast per second. And so it became this, like, running thing where Mom, like, I was also complaining at that time. I was like, Mom, I feel like I'm a catch. Like, I feel like I should have found the girl by now. I feel like I should have found my career and my job. And it's just like, everything just feels more difficult than it should be. And she was like, it's because you're chasing. She was like, just imagine if you think about a plant and you curate the soil, you really water that plant, you make sure it's getting beautiful sunlight, like it starts to bloom, it starts to blossom. It then starts to attract the hummingbird. As opposed to the plant trying to chase the hummingbird. If you run up to a hummingbird or a bunny, it runs away. And growing up, we always went camping a ton. So, like, the nature analogies always hit me because I was like, whoa, like, nature seems chaotic and not orderly. And then you observe it and it's so perfect. I was like, as humans, we're kind of perfect, but we screw it up by, like, letting the thing between our ears kind of dictate behavior that's, like, in pursuant of things that maybe we think are in our best interest, but we're not allowing it to happen. And there's not an energetic connection with God to allow it to happen.
Right.
Like, we think we're going to, like, make our future. And it's like, it takes a lot of variables to be in the right space to create that domino effect or that ripple effect. And so it shifted my headspace once I connected with Justin, you know, in alignment with our theme today of, like, surrender, connection, nature, masculine vulnerability. That doesn't mean I'm always vulnerable.
Right.
There's certain times where I wake up and I'm like, I got to get shit done today. Like, this needs to happen. This needs to happen. It's like, it is that hot with the cold, the hard with the soft, the light with the dark, the peak with the valley.
So good.
And so I think through all of these experiences, and even our connection, it's just like showing up, doing your best, but realizing that, like, the goal is to show up with an energy that you can attract, or you can hold space to allow somebody to come play. And within that, now you make new friends, you make new conversations, you make new experiences. And I think that's the thing that I saw most at the end of my parents' life, is they talked about experiences. And that, to me, is truly living, not just existing.
Being, not just doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. Tell my audience, our audience, where ALLSMITH, the name, came from, because your last name is Smith.
Yeah. So my mom got a medical bill when my dad was going through his cancer, and we were doing some explorative things because glioblastoma is kind of weird. It's terminal brain cancer. And so he was trying some explorative things at, like, UCLA, a couple different places. We didn't realize how expensive those were going to be.
Yeah.
And my mom was an accountant at a bowling alley for over 40 years. And so my mom was pretty good with finances. Like, she taught us as young kids, math and science was always very important. We always had to count certain things and help her with you know, she would have this handful of change, like, hey, count this. If it's right, I'll let you keep it. If not, like, you know, I'm taking it back. Little things like that. She would gamify learning for us. And she received a bill for, like, over $20,000. And I was sitting at our, like, freaking old school kitchen table, baskets on the wall, orange carpet in the house, kind of smelled like cat piss a little bit, like, just trying to create the visuals for people.
Yeah.
My mom walks over and she had these tears in her eyes, and I was just like, Mom, what's up? And she was like, I was not expecting this. And she had opened the mail, and it was like a medical bill for over $20,000. And I was just like, whoa. In that moment is where I feel like I went from a boy to a man. And I was like, I have to help figure this out. My brother's in medical school. My sister's doing stuff. Like, we've got to try to figure this out. And, like, my sister came to bat for sure because she was making money at the time. And I was brand new and into working, fresh back from Sweden-ish. And so my sister stepped up big time. But I just remember I created this hashtag called SmithStrong. And I just started slinging T-shirts out of the back of my car. I was going to the beach and just, selling them for $20 here, $20 there. And I just took the totality of the money and just like handed it to my mom, and it helped pay those medical bills. And it gave me proof of concept that like, oh, I think I could be an entrepreneur. Fast forward, I couldn't really figure out what's next. Like I started a business called Project You. I thought it was all about you and like the project and working on yourself and how I can help support that. We were trying to make an app. I spent so much money and it went nowhere. It was a great failure that I learned a ton. I'd done a Super Bowl commercial at the time for Michelob Ultra. So I took all of that capital and put it into this business venture and flushed it all down the toilet. And not proud of it, but it was a phenomenal learning lesson. And I couldn't quite figure out, like, how do we do this next thing? And in conversations with my mom, when she later got diagnosed, which originally they thought it was ovarian cancer, ended up being colon cancer. We just were having conversations, and like she was just talking about how I used to coach people in the garage, and she was talking about how like a lot of my life had been marinated with adversity. And one of my Sanskrit tattoos is strength through adversity. Like for some reason around adversity, I just find a way to show up. Like I was kind of bored in the first quarter of basketball, but in the fourth quarter when everybody else sped up, I feel like I kind of slowed down a little bit. And I'm not really sure where that comes from. I just feel like I thrive in chaos. My very first CrossFit class had 53 people in it. I loved it. It's not weird to me to have that level of chaos. I mean, sometimes Ernest will come to the gym and it's so many different things. And it's like when it's chaotic, I love it. Don't know where exactly that comes from. But anyway, my mom and I were chatting and we're like, you're either in adversity, you just left it, or you're approaching it. What is a Smith? Like, let's define that.
Yeah.
You're forging yourself underneath extreme heat and adversity in pursuit of making something really cool or useful. I was like, holy moly, we're all Smiths. And then it was born. I was like, I'm going with it. And so literally the next day I was like trying to get the domain name. I was trying to do all the things on social. I was trying to like figure out the tagline. I was listening to the book Shoe Dog at the time around like the development of Nike with Phil Knight. And I realized like, okay, just do it. What's the ALLSMITH version of just do? Oh, forged, not found. And so I just got very excited, full of piss and vinegar, called anybody that I felt like would be willing to help, graphic designers, people that can help with font, try to get all the things going. And it was just born. And from that day forward, I never looked back.
It's funny, when I saw the name of it, it took me a second to realize, like, Smith's your last name. And then I was curious the story behind ALLSMITH. And when I, like, see the name or think of it, yeah, it's definitely, like, kind of got this, like, assassin energy. Like, I'm a badass. So it's very fitting.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Where I'd like it to go is we've got your back. When you put an ALLSMITH shirt on, it's like whether you're kicking ass right now and you just want a little support, or you're in it,
Yeah.
we'll give you a hug. Or if you need a little pull, we'll grab your hand and pull you along, get you across that finish line, or we'll sit with you in this space and we'll hold space and be with you. That's what I'd like to get the brand to feel like from the external. And I think forging is a powerful word.
Yeah.
But I think forging is also being. Sometimes when you put that anvil and you're forging something, sure. But before that, you have to actually put the piece of metal in the heat and let it just sit for a second. It's part of the process of becoming. And that's part of the narrative that I would really love people to understand, that it's not always the actionable. Sometimes it's the chill. A field of rest brings a bountiful crop.
Yes. And I think that lands us, that I feel like we accomplished in this conversation exactly what I wanted to accomplish, which was to have a male and a female have a conversation with depth about, faith, entrepreneurship, business, hardship, and that it is about being, not just doing. We've got to do the doing. Like you said, like some days we wake up, we've got to grind, but it's not just about that. And that the gap, the stillness, the surrender is ultimately, I feel like we're in agreement that it gets to a point where at a certain level, you have to acknowledge that, you've got to sit in that, you have to be that, to be able to actually get to where you're trying to go, whatever success is for you or me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it was an honor to spend this time in your space. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I loved it.